If you're looking to start baling for yourself for the first time, or maybe looking to replace a baler on your small farm, you may want to consider the 1745D baler from Massey Ferguson. So, the 1745D is actually new for this year. You might be thinking to yourself, I've seen that baler before. What you've seen is the 1745 baler. So the 1745 has been in production for a long time. This year they added the D, and what the D stands for is drop and go. So no longer do we have to kick the PTO off in order to discharge a bale. All we do, raise the tailgate, kick your bale out, shut it, get back to baling. So that's gonna be a really nice feature that's just gonna take this baler up a notch. The 1745, so the 4-5 stands for 4x5 baler, and it's a 1700 series. So with a 4x5 baler, we can get, bales pushing up to 1,000, even maybe up to 1,200 pounds, just kind of depending on the crop, because it does pack a really, really tight crop, or really tight bale. And then one of the nice things about this baler is you can pull it with a significantly smaller tractor. We need a minimum of 40 PTO horsepower. So there's some small, there's some large compact tractors, and of course your utility tractors, and maybe even some small mid-range tractors that this baler is perfect for, such as the Massey Ferguson 2860M. A couple of the 2600 series tractors will also work well, like a 2606 or 2607 would pull this baler really nice, and maybe even 2605H. Or of course, many of the global series tractors, such as the 4700 and 5700, would pull this baler just fantastic. It's been a really popular baler, the 1745 has been for us here at PR Equipment, but the 1745D baler just kind of takes that up a notch. You can get this baler in two varieties. You can get it in a twine only or a twine and mesh option with the deluxe controller. We try to talk customers into always going with that twine and mesh. Even if you're not going to use mesh, it really, really helps the resale of this baler, because mesh is so popular these days. It speeds your process. Not only does it make a cleaner bale, a squarer bale, but you're also speeding up the process of making that hay, because it takes a lot less time to wrap that net than it does to wrap twine. So definitely, if you're in the market, you might consider, even if you're really stuck on twine, you may consider getting a twine and mesh baler, just simply from the standpoint of resale value and having that flexibility down the road, because it's not something you want to add later to a baler. So popping open the side, you can see it's a really simple baler. There's not much to it, and that makes it nice. So if you're not used to balers, or you're not used to working on balers, this is a good one to get started with, because it is so simple. There's a few bearings to grease, and there's actually a handy grease chart here that'll tell you where all those points are on both sides of the baler. There's a few service items on both sides of the baler, but you've always got this chart to refer to. Here you can actually see we've got a sensor here. What this sensor does, this actually sets your bale full alarm. So you can move this and basically change the size of the bale that you're looking for. And I should mention that this is going to trigger the auto tie. So this baler does have auto tie that you can turn on when you get the Deluxe controller, which we'll show you in a minute. But this gives you an auto tie feature, so when you're out baling and that bale gets full, you're going to know it. You're going to get a warning. It's time to stop. You come to a stop, and the baler is going to start to wrap itself, which is a really nice feature. We also use three of these exact same sensors, which I'll talk about that in a minute, for the twine. So these are called the Twine Stops, and these are set to control at what point the twine stops on the bale. So you can adjust that very, very easily with just a couple wrenches. What I really like about it is there's a lot of common parts on this baler. So let's say maybe down the road you have a switch that goes out on your mesh wrap. You can steal one from here and move it up here. I like that. It helps us be a little bit more flexible for our customers, and of course this works vice versa. So if you're just testing a switch, you've got a switch to test it with. So I really like that. There's a lot of commonality on this baler, and it just makes it really easy to troubleshoot and work on, because let's face it, it is mechanical. At some point you will have to work on it. But these balers are very, very simple, and that makes it really easy. Just a little bit about the controller. This is the Deluxe controller. It's not complicated, and I think that's really one of the nicest features. It doesn't take much to install this, and it definitely doesn't take much to learn. You've got a few features here where you can switch between twine and mesh. You can run the actuators for the mesh or the twine manually. If you need to do that for whatever reason, you can run that manually. You can put it on auto tie, and so whenever the bale gets full, it's going to start tying. Or you can hit the cycle start when you need to wrap that last bale of the field. That makes it real nice. And if you install the shape kit, you can actually get the shape lights to come on to tell you where to drive to make that bale as square as possible. And over here, you can tell it's got an orange light here that comes on when we're actually feeding mesh. Because you can't see the mesh roll, we need something to indicate the fact that we are applying mesh, and so that's what that light's for, and that's really nice. And then we've got a knob here. So let's say maybe I want to put on a little bit more mesh. All you got to do is bump that knob up a little bit, and you're going to get more mesh. And it talks about that in the book, kind of where to set that. So don't think that's too complicated either. But as you get used to it and you decide, hey, I like it here, I like it here, all you got to do is adjust it there. And finally, it has a switch for the kicker if your baler is equipped with a kicker. So there's also a door just like this on the other side that opens up to the rest of the mechanical parts of the baler. And that just makes it really easy to service because that door swings way out and away. So since we were talking about kickers, I think it's a good time to talk about some options for these balers. So you can get this baler in, like we talked about, with twine or twine and mesh. You can get it with a kicker or a bale ramp. Kickers are really nice if you're running in hills. We like the bale ramp here in Central Texas because it's simpler and it's quicker. So we really like the bale ramp. A couple other features that guys really like, and this baler come with it just hadn't been installed, is the gathering wheels. The gathering wheels are just going to help kind of gather that crop up and kind of basically make your pickup just a little wider. You can also get counters, which this baler has. You can also get, like we talked about with the shape sensor, that's also an option. So there's a few options that you can get to kind of really customize this baler to work exactly how you want. But I think what I really like about this baler is how simple the mesh system is. So let's go take a look. So on the mesh system, I love how open and wide this gets. Because at some point you probably will have to work on this. You know, for whatever reason down the road you got to clean it out or whatnot. You probably will have to work on this. And so we can drop the doors, we can open up the sides. It just makes it really easy if you need to make any adjustments, if you need to change your mesh roll, you know, your roll of mesh, if, like say, maybe you need to work on an actuator, whatever it is, you can just get to everything in this mesh system. So I really like that. Customers really do too. So last thing I thought we'd talk about, oh, and I guess before that, this is the sensor. This is the sensor wheel that's rolling, that's showing us that, hey, the mesh is applying. So as this is turning, we know we're applying mesh. So let's go through the process of changing the mesh roll, because I think that's one of the nicest part of this baler is just how simple it is. So this is called the mesh brake, and so what that does is applies a constant pressure to the mesh roll. So we're gonna flip that back and out of the way, which is gonna reveal this cradle. So this is just a partial roll, so it's not so heavy, but if you had a big roll, this is a nice place to stage it. So you can stage it here, you can pull some mesh off. I like to kind of rip that in half and then maybe tie a couple knots, one on each side, kind of how I like to do it. And of course, when we do this, we want to make sure our mesh is feeding from underneath, because it's going to come underneath, up over this lip, and down by the roller. So we're going to tie a knot in both sides. We're going to pull a little extra out, and we're going to tuck it in between the roller and then the mesh door. So we're going to tuck it down in there. And then come down here, and you're gonna see that mesh. So we're gonna pull that mesh down. And I also like to, once we get it down here, tie another knot in it. That just kind of helps it pull it in there. And so now everything down here is actually done. So we can just leave that in that door. Whoops. And we'll come back up here. And so now spread your mesh wide. And we're going to take up a little tension as we do this. We're going to set that mesh down in that trough. We're going to kind of spread that mesh wide so it starts off nice and wide going in there. We're going to reapply our mesh brake, and you're good to go. This mesh is going to start feeding for you really nice. There's a couple of adjustments to consider back here. That is you got these end stops, and what those end stops do, you change those if you want to run a 51 or if you're running a 48-inch mesh, you can change these stops, and that holds that roll from side to side. But overall, you've got a tension on the brake to adjust, you've got these stops to adjust. There's really not much to adjust on these mesh systems, they just work. We suggest this baler for guys who are maybe doing up to about 1,000 bales a year. It runs really, really well in those applications, and it does a good job at a pretty affordable price. So if y'all have any questions about anything to do with the hay production cycle, whether it's tilling, planting, spraying, cutting, raking, tedding, baling, we're here to help you through the entire production cycle. And if you need a new tractor to pull that the hay package, we're here for that too. I'm Nick Palmer with PR Equipment. Come check us out or just give us a call at 903-270-0877. Thanks.